The Akkadian Empire begins with a problem that still feels modern. How does one ruler turn rival cities, languages, gods, armies, and trade routes into something that behaves like a single state? Before Akkad, southern Mesopotamia was already old. Sumerian cities such as Uruk, Lagash, and Kish had temples, scribes, canals, kings, rivalries, and archives before Sargon entered the story. The evidence is not one perfect royal biography. It is scattered across inscriptions, later copies, king lists, seals, tablets, art, and archaeology. Akkad is history, but history seen through broken clay. Sargon of Akkad is the name that changes the map. Later tradition made his birth legendary, but the historical memory is clear enough. Sargon became the model of the conquering Mesopotamian king. The famous story says Sargon was placed in a basket and set upon a river before rising to power. That is not verified biography. It is royal legend, a story of hidden origin turned into destiny. What matters historically is what Sargon did with force and administration. He broke local resistance, claimed cities, installed loyal officials, and made conquest into a repeatable governing method. The empire's core was Mesopotamia's river world. The Tigris and Euphrates were not background scenery. They were transport lines, irrigation arteries, grain systems, and political pressure points. Maps make Akkad easier to understand. This was not an empire of one city glowing alone. It was a network: cities, canals, roads, tribute paths, temples, garrisons, and trade links pulled toward a royal center. Akkadian power also moved through language. Akkadian, a Semitic language, rose beside Sumerian written culture. Empire did not erase older culture, it learned how to use it. That overlap is one of the empire's most valuable lessons. Conquest alone can seize a city, but paperwork keeps the taxes, labor, offerings, and supplies moving after the army leaves. Sargon's successors inherited both opportunity and danger. An empire built through force must keep proving that the center can reward friends, punish rebels, and move resources faster than local rivals. Rimush and Menishtushu appear in king lists and inscriptions as rulers after Sargon. Their reigns remind us that empire is never only a founder's miracle, it is a maintenance problem. Then comes Naram-Sin, the ruler who made Akkadian kingship look almost cosmic. His victory stele shows a king climbing above enemies, wearing horn divine symbolism, and turning battle into sacred theater. The victory stele of Naram-Sin is one of the clearest visual evidence units for the empire. It is not just art, it is propaganda, theology, battlefield memory, and state ideology carved into stone. Popular history often says Akkad was the first empire. That phrase is useful, but it needs care. Earlier states had power, but Akkad is often treated as the first durable territorial empire in Mesopotamian memory. Its army mattered, but so did legitimacy. Akkadian kings had to speak to gods, temples, cities, soldiers, and scribes all at once. Every conquest needed a story that made domination feel order. Religion did not sit outside the state. Temples controlled land, labor, offerings, and memory. To rule Mesopotamia, an empire had to negotiate with sacred institutions, not simply command them. Enheduanna, traditionally remembered as Sargon's daughter, gives Akkad a different kind of power. She is linked to hymns, priestly office, and the blending of royal politics with sacred literature. Whether every attribution is simple is debated, but the tradition matters. Enheduanna shows that empire was not only soldiers and walls, it was also songs, offices, gods, and controlled memory. The Akkadian Empire reached beyond the alluvial heartland. Its texts and later memories point toward campaigns, influence, or trade links reaching mountains, coastlands, and distant resource zones. Why expand? Because Mesopotamia had grain, cities, and scribes, but it needed timber, stone, metals, and prestige goods. Empire was also a machine for pulling resources across difficult landscapes. The empire's strength created its weakness. The farther power stretched, the more it depended on roads, messengers, garrisons, food supply, and local cooperation. Distance turns victory into logistics. Rebellion was not a side note. Mesopotamian cities had deep identities, gods, elites, and memories of independence. Akkad had to keep reconquering loyalty, not just territory. Later stories accused Naram-Sin of offending the gods, especially in traditions around the curse of Akkad. That is not a neutral chronicle, it is a literary explanation for collapse through divine anger. The historical collapse was probably more complicated. Political strain, rebellion, succession problems, outside pressure, trade disruption, and climate stress may all have played roles. One major modern clue is climate. Some researchers connect the Akkadian collapse period with aridification around 4,200 years ago. This is evidence-based, but still part of an interpretive debate. Climate does not overthrow an empire by itself. Drought becomes political when canals fail, harvests shrink, prices rise, migration increases, and rulers can no longer keep promises. The Gudians appear in later Mesopotamian memory as outsiders associated with Akkad's fall, but the picture is filtered through hostile sources. They are part history, part political label, part literary villain. This is where evidence labels matter. Documented rulers are not the same as later curse texts. Climate data is not the same as royal propaganda. The story is strongest when each claim keeps its proper label. Akkad itself remains frustratingly elusive. The imperial capital has not been securely identified. That absence is not a failure of imagination. It is one of the empire's deepest archaeological mysteries. That missing capital gives the empire a strange afterlife. We know its rulers, symbols, language, and impact. Yet the central place that gave the empire its name remains hidden. After Akkad, Mesopotamia did not become empty. New powers rose, including Ur-3, and later kings kept looking back to Sargon and Naram-Sin as models of terrifying royal possibility. That is the real legacy of Akkad, not just territory, but a template. The idea that one ruler could command many cities, many gods, many languages, and many routes did not disappear. The popular version says Sargon created the first empire and then it fell. The deeper version asks how force, writing, religion, climate, logistics, and memory made empire possible, then unstable. The strongest evidence is not a single dramatic battle scene, but a chain of administrative traces, names, titles, grain accounts, royal inscriptions, and cities pulled into one political language. That paperwork shows how conquest became routine government. So the question is not only why Akkad rose. The sharper question is why every later empire kept repeating the same gamble: centralize the world, stretch the routes, trust the records, and hope the climate holds. Akkadian power also depended on translation between worlds. Sumerian cities, Semitic names, temple economies, and royal ideology did not merge cleanly. They had to be negotiated by scribes, officials, soldiers, and priests who made empire work day by day. Akkad endures because it sits at the beginning of a long imperial argument. It tells us that the first great maps of power were drawn not only with armies, but with rivers, tablets, gods, and fragile grain. The collapse matters because it was not only a fall from greatness. Climate stress, local resistance, succession pressure, and long supply lines all help explain why a brilliant imperial experiment could become too heavy to hold together. That is the final lesson of Akkad. Empire was not only won by armies, but maintained through records, routes, and obedience.